Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. And a very good day to you all. Today, we would like to discuss one of the important aspect of Islamic financial legal framework, that is legal documentation. Basically, legal documentation in Islam is something that has been asked of us to do, as stated in Quran, and as an evidence in the future. So also known as asad in Islamic view, and one of the principal Islamic contract law, preferable and important in both Islamic law and Western law. So documenting an agreement in a contract can be in writing, verbal, or maybe both. And however, to make it as evidence that proven by law, it must be in appropriate writing agreements, because we must make sure that both parties understand the content of the agreement. Yeah, because in Islam we must not only avoid riba, gharar, and maisir. Yeah, gharar is uncertainty, maisir is gambling. Uncertainty will lead to gambling because you don't know what you are getting. It leads to gambling. So that's related. So that's why the writing of the contract must be clear for both parties involved, so that if any disputes occur in future, then both parties can refer to the agreed agreements. So evidence in Quran, as I mentioned earlier, in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayat 22, or you who believe when you deal with each other in future obligations in a fixed period of time, reduce them in writing. Stated in the Al-Baqarah, ayat 282, means that if we promise to pay, if we have obligation with other parties, then we must put that in writing. Because sometimes that other parties might be aware of their obligation, but anything might happen. Yeah, anything might occur. Let's say that person was ill, yeah, or in extreme cases died. So who will fulfill the obligation if there's no evidence with regard to the amount owed? So that's why, and of course, stated that reduce them in writing. So we must have them in writing. So objective of legal documentation, and to express the intention of any parties that conclude in the contract and putting all that has been agreed in written form. So notice the word agreed. Let's say if you don't agree, then you don't have to give your consent. So it cannot be one party. Let's say just you demanding 50,000 in 5 years' time, but the other party don't know, then and don't agree to the amount. That's why it must be agreed in written form. Maybe a signature stating both parties are consented to the written agreement. So binding and has legal effect. What is binding? So it can be brought to court, and enforceable by law, and also must be able to be referred back in the event of variation or the determination of the transaction. Notice there's a number of cases with regard to Islamic banks disputing the variation or disputing the event that took place when the agreement signed. So this can be issues between buyer and seller. So in order to eliminate the issues, in order to reduce disputes, then the contract or the legal agreement must be clear, must be in line with Sharia, of course, and also it must have this enforceability. So if it is not enforceable, then it's no use, because some parties, they might not honor the contract, and it's to prevent doubt among parties. Okay, so reduce the tension, the heartache, and also the worry between parties. So that's why it must be clear beforehand. So to bind both contracting parties and to honor their respective obligations and not to betray the trust of the both parties. So remember, as we look in previous chapters, brotherhood in Islam is important. We are having this contract not only to enrich ourselves, not only to make ourselves wealthier, but also it must be to nurture the brotherhood, the Muslim brotherhood between party A and party B. So that's the gist here. So not to enrich one party by taking advantage of other party. And risk of the transaction can be minimized to the lowest. Yeah, so whoever, let's say, read the contract will able to understand. Let's say Mr. A owes Mr. B and promise to pay in 5 years, certain amount. So it must be clear. So whoever read the contract, they must understand easily so that it can be executed in a way as per intention of the contract written. So it must be clear. And without the legal documentations, they can't claim back due to any redress, remedy or damages as they have no proof on contract. So normally, even SNP, sales and purchase agreement of a house, normally the bank will hold one copy, the customer or the buyer will hold one copy, and also the legal firm in charge will also hold one copy. So normally this to prevent any issues later on. So everything has been stated in the contract. So that's why we need to read the contract carefully. Even the fine line, you need to write. You need to understand the meaning of some of the words in the contract. So next, effective legal documentation. Key elements for validity and enforceability of the legal documentation are: number one, it must be in compliance with the Sharia principle, because this is Islamic financial legal framework documentation. Yeah, it is something got to do with the principle of Islamic banking. So must be in line with Sharia, because there's some cases that argue about the Sharia principle. They say that yes, this is Islamic banking contract, but you don't practice Islamic banking as per intention. They can you. So to ensure that all the terms and conditions of the transaction has all the characteristics of being in line with the Sharia, so that it ensures acceptance, validity, and enforceability from the Islamic law. So I remember this one case, when the customer cannot pay the bank, so they said that, or it does not follow Sharia, because it is far more hazardous to me. But then what the judge stated is that, oh, this is like you order food in restaurant and you eat the food, but then you refuse to pay. That's the example given by the judge. Number two, compliance with the existing laws of the country. The documentation must adhere to the laws of the country to determine the status of the documents in the eye of law. So let's say you have an agreement with your counterparts from overseas. You must determine which country's jurisdiction to use, because in let's say in UK, they use common law. Okay, so we must follow the procedures in the countries chosen. And such documents must get its validity to enable it to be tendered as evidence in any courts. So that's why in the previous chapters, we look at the functions played by ombudsman. Okay, so ombudsman means that this tribunal will look after the documents before they get discussed in court to reduce time, cost, and also to smoothen the process. Okay, so I think this is quite an interesting topic. Inshallah, we'll have discuss about this in a future sessions. With that, I finish this session with Tasbih Kifara as well as, and also take care, be safe, and may Allah be with you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.